Hello, chemistry students. Today we are going to talk about naming compounds. There are three different types of compounds we will name today. We will name binary ionic compounds with polyatomic ions in them, and then binary molecular compounds. The items you will need handy for this lesson today are your list of common polyatomic ions and your periodic table. All right, so we're going to start with binary ionic compounds. The cation in the ionic compound will just be the name of the metal followed by the word ion. So that one's easy. And for example, if lithium were in the compound, you would call it a lithium ion. And then if you were naming the compound, you would leave the word ion off. So lithium is our example. For an anion, the naming rules are a little different. They start with the stem of the element name, and then they end in the suffix "ide", followed by the word ion. So fluorine becomes fluoride ion. So if we combine our cation and anion examples, we would just call this lithium fluoride. So on the anion, you just replace the suffix with the suffix "ide". Now, sometimes there are metals, specifically transition metals, that form more than one ion, and when that happens, there will be a Roman numeral in parentheses after the name of the element. So Fe2 plus will be written as iron, and then in Roman numerals, in parentheses, 2. So if we had Fe plus 2 combining with fluorine, it would yield FeF, and there would need to be 2 fluorine, so it would be FeF2. And the name of this would be iron 2 fluoride. So let's practice some. So we have zinc, and the anion is sulfur, so we will just call that sulfide. Okay, next we have potassium. And our anion is chlorine, so the name of this would be potassium chloride. Barium is our cation here. And it's combined with oxygen, so we will call that oxide. Finally, we have aluminum fluoride. All right. Next, we are going to name ionic compounds that have polyatomic ions. So to name these, you would first write the cation name. So that's the same rule as before. It's just the name of the metal. And then you just write the anion name found on the chart that you copied down last week. If the cation is a metallic element that has more than one common ionic charge, include a Roman numeral in the cation name. So all of these rules are the same, but you just don't have to worry about the "ide" anymore. You can just pull the anion name off of the polyatomic ion chart. So let's practice. Then this one, I'm going to go ahead and highlight the polyatomic ion just so it's clear to you where the cation stops. So this one is calcium. And C2O4 is oxalate. Next we have potassium. Hypochlorite. This one is potassium. Permanganate. And then we have lithium. Silicate. Now, binary molecular compounds have a different naming system entirely because they are covalently bonded and they can combine in multiple ways. Ionic molecules can only combine in one way because the ions have a specific charge and it needs to be neutral in the end. But carbon and oxygen, two nonmetals, can combine in multiple ways. For example, you can have the CO molecule and the CO2 molecule. So both of these, if you were using the ionic naming rules, would have the same name. It would be carbon oxide. But these two molecules are completely different, so they need different names. So the first step in naming a binary molecular compound is to write the names of the elements in the order listed in the formula. Then you would use prefixes to indicate the number of each kind of atom. And as a note, you do not need to use the prefix mono for the first element. If there's only one of the first element, you can leave that prefix off. And also, the vowel at the end of the prefix is sometimes dropped off when the name of the element begins with a vowel. So like oxygen begins with a vowel, so you would leave off the vowel in the prefix. And finally, you end the name of the second element with the suffix "ide." The first molecule here is carbon. There's only one, so we're going to leave off mono. And there's only one oxygen, so we will call that carbon mon ox, and then we're going to add our "ide." Carbon monoxide. This one will begin the same, carbon, but there are two oxygens this time, so we would call it carbon dioxide. you're going to need to have that chart, you're going to need to have this chart completely copied into your notes because it's going to be just as important as the common polyatomic ions. So take a moment right now to just copy down these prefixes in your notes, and then we're going to practice over here. Okay, so let's name these binary molecular compounds. We have one oxygen here, so it's oxygen. Then there are two fluorines, so it's difluoride. Okay, we have two sulfurs, so we will call this compound disulfur. Decafluoride. Okay, now we have sulfur, trioxide. And then finally, we have sulfur, hexafluoride.